Hello from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Oh, well, we have quite a lot of terrain to cover today, so I'm going to plunge right in, if I may, because there are great concerns behind the scenes where Harry's loved ones are concerned, and I think I will touch upon what their great concerns are, because I actually touched upon them in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. But I handled it very delicately because I was respecting Harry's feelings, Harry's privacy, or Harry's sensibilities, Harry's vulnerabilities, and I didn't want to wade in. But Harry and Meghan have been wading in, and Harry in particular recently has been wading in, and because he's wading in, he's really actually upping the ante and really forcing one's hand and, allowing the introduction of delicacies that one really would have preferred to keep off the table. However, he's done it, and it's very relevant to what's going on. And so I will touch upon it and interweave it with the questions, because it's not actually directly asked, but it is a very, very weighty, and it is something that really does need to be addressed. So if I may, I will start off by asking what Tracy Wilson says. Dear Lady C, Mickey I think wants to go. Mickey, you want to go? Okay, honey, go. And don't snore. People say that they hear you snoring. Don't snore. Love you, baby. Dear Lady C, with response to your latest YouTube regarding petitioning Harry and Meghan to voluntarily give up their titles, I understand to be eligible to run for the presidency of the USA, nobody can have a British royal title. Do you possibly think that they may be manipulating the situation for this to happen, so legally their titles cannot be removed? Well, it never ceases to amaze me how people think and come up with absolutely new perspectives that when you're that as close to the subject as I am, they don't even occur to you. Oh, well, we all know that Meghan is extremely manipulative, and Harry doesn't seem to be falling too far behind her at the moment. But the reality is, if Meghan wants to run for the presidency of the United States of America, she cannot utilize a foreign title. If Harry wishes to become an American citizen, he would not be able to continue to have any royal title whatsoever. So even if the titles are put into abeyance, he will have no access to them, nor will Meghan, because the fact of the matter is that he will have to renounce those titles. And for her to enter politics, she would have to renounce her right to any foreign title, any aristocratic title. The American Constitution does not allow for aristocratic or royal titles at all. Pilot Hardy wants to know, So the public isn't allowed to empathise with the royal family's grief for Diana, but we damn well better empathise with Harry and his wife's rich people problems. That's a question, by the way. It has a question mark. Laugh out loud. Sure, Harry, he says. Yes, well, in a nutshell, there we have it, don't we? Harry very disdainfully let the cat out of the bag by showing everybody in his latest retching of his inner feelings how he disdainfully looked at the public who were grief-stricken about his mother's death and effectively disparaged and even more than disparaged, negated their grief. And his attitude was, well, who are you? You didn't even know her. I mean, I knew her. She was my mother. I mean, who are you? You know, Harry doesn't get that it doesn't play well to say to a public that loved him and or his mother, know your place, little people, and don't forget it, which is what he's saying. Veronica Sizemore says, Harry now has had ample opportunity to dispel the claim that the British public are racist. He has chosen not to do this. Instead, he has had another go at us for caring about his mother. JFK's children went through the trauma of a public murder of their father. I don't recall any of them being bitter about the public's response and subsequent mourning. Petition signed and shared. He's a disgrace. Well, Veronica Sizemore, you're right. You're right. The Kennedys appreciated the fact that the public, or those elements of the public that revered their father. Harry despises them. It's quite obvious that he does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have articulated the thought of looking down on them. Well, the Kennedys might not be royal, but they certainly are a lot more regal than Harry and a heck of a lot more appreciative of the fact that the public loved their father. You know, it's what I call the Hugh Grant up your own bum form of I'm a celebrity and just disappear, you little people. Who do you think you are, daring to interfere with me? When I'm not on, you're allowed to clap, but otherwise, know your place. Crawl under the rock whence you came. I think it's really a very nasty approach to have to people who actually like you or love you. And certainly, it's really dreadful for children to denigrate public sympathy for the loss of a parent whom the public loved. Miss Speeches. So Harry says all things Charles/father are bad. Go to the YouTube channel Blue Band and watch video titled Princes William and Harry talked about their father. Clearly, there were plenty of good times before his wife showed up. She has dangerously manipulated his memories. I actually did look at that video after I read this comment. I looked at it, and the affection that both boys evinced for their father was palpable. There was no doubt that they had a real affection for their father. Either that, or Harry's the greatest fraud that one has ever seen since the actress Meghan showed us what falsity is all about and what truth is all about. Yes, and I think at this point I will touch upon the concerns that have been bubbling along really from before I wrote the book. This is one of the reasons why certain loved ones of Harry's were so eager for me to write the book, and why they gave me some of the information that they did. Because they were of the opinion that Meghan, as I have repeatedly said, was playing Harry the way Jascha Heifetz used to play the violin. Now, to those of you who are not interested in classical music, Jascha Heifetz was one of the greatest violinists of all time. So it's high praise indeed for me to say that Meghan is an artist of the highest order where playing Harry is concerned. There is little doubt in my mind, having heard all the things privately that I was privy to, gratis the various loved ones who were deeply concerned about what was going on in that relationship. And this, remember, was before they decamped to foreign shores. You know, especially recently, I mean, the newspapers are full of the fact that the Queen is very upset with Harry, that Prince Charles is really distressed, and that the relationship between Harry and his father is hanging by a thread, that they are outraged at the various comments and denigrations that Harry has been making via Oprah, or maybe we should call her Oprah, because she's certainly very operatic. I mean, she would put Puccini, in fact, she'd put Rossini to shame. I mean, she's right up there with all the great opera performers, conductors, actresses, singers, actors, and composers, all rolled into one. She's really very appropriately named. I wonder if maybe her mother thought of naming her Opera, you know, like opera, and got it slightly wrong, and she was called Oprah, because she certainly is so hyper. And so is Harry. Harry is a histrionic personality. So's Meghan, actually. Both of them have streaks of great histrionic. Mickey's jumped up. Poor Mickey, come here and get a kiss. It's okay, honey. They have these overdramatic personalities where everything is at fever pitch. I mean, they're the sort of person that if you say to them, "How are you?" It's not, "Oh, I'm all right, thank you." It's, "Oh, I'm absolutely fantastic," or, "I'm terrible and I've never had a worse time in my life. I woke up this morning and got up on the wrong side of the bed and I put my left foot down instead of my right foot and it's driving me crazy." And so nothing with either Harry or Meghan is restrained, is moderate, is measured, or is proportionate. This has been one of the keys to not only the success and strength of their relationship, but to the fears that Harry's loved ones have for the outcome of this relationship. Because it's no secret that people at the palace, even before the marriage, were taking bets that the relationship would last 3 to 5 years. Maybe it will last forever. However, there's never been any doubt in the minds of many people that it is not for the longest haul, that it is for a short haul to Fort Knox. With Meghan's propensity to hyperdrama and Harry's propensity to hyperdrama, they are at fever pitch at all times. And this is one of the keys, not only to their relationship, but to how effectively she plays Harry. And the fair, and I'll come right out with it, because since Harry's busy spilling his guts on Oprah, I don't see why I shouldn't spill a few of the fears that his loved ones have for him. People have been concerned from the very early days that Meghan is a master manipulator, that Harry is very impressionable, very malleable, and also very, very paranoid. So, and she can play upon not only his fears, but his self-importance, because paranoia, one of the main traits of paranoia, is heightened self-importance, over self-importance. Along with that goes, everybody's against me. So she's been very able to play upon his paranoia according to his loved ones who fear what will happen. And that and this now, I have to tell you, was the fear of these people 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now. Because when I started to be approached to write the book, I was being approached by people who were terrified what the outcome of this relationship would be. And in a word, their great fear was that with Harry's basic instability, his tremendous pride, he's very proud, his great self-importance, he hates being humiliated. Most people do, so that's nothing unique about that. But somebody who is as self-important as he is finds mockery intolerable in a way that healthier individuals will dislike it, but find a way of coping with it. And the great fear has always been that Meghan would not only take over Harry and his personality, which she has done, at least it looks as if she's done, and Harry certainly confirms that she has done it. You know, he comes out with really bizarre, weird things like, I never knew I was trapped until Meghan pointed it out to me. I mean, like, Meghan is the leader of the cult and Harry is her high priest. Or Meghan is the one who's in his head and he no longer has a brain, and the thought comes out of her tongue into his ear and then out of his mouth. So people were concerned that Meghan was hijacking Harry's personality, and that having hijacked it, and this was before she had as successfully hijacked it as she has clearly done, because this was before she moved him to America and managed to let him think that it was his idea, which is just a joke, because he also confirmed on Oprah that it wouldn't have happened without her, and that basically all ideas come from this Delphic oracle called Meghan Markle. But the fear has been that once she has completely usurped his personality and is through with him, that Harry is so unstable that although he is not an intra-punitive personality, Harry doesn't accept blame for anything. It's everybody else's fault. That's what intra-punitive would mean, that it's you take in the blame for yourself and turn things inwards. Harry turns them outwards. Harry is busy punishing everybody and never himself. That's what extra-punitive means, to those of you who don't know it. Intra is inside, extra is externalized. That despite being an extra-punitive personality, that when she's ready to discard Harry, if she's ever ready to discard Harry, that he would commit suicide. I put it very gently in my book because I did not think that it was a subject matter that I should so boldly articulate as I am now doing. But Meghan's and Harry's admission that she has been playing the suicide card with him. Oh, H, I'm so distraught. Bad publicity. I never read anything about myself, ever. But all those things that all those people are saying have driven me to suicide. And I'm going to do it like this, and then I'm going to do that, and that really sick stuff. That really sick stuff. And it shows, you see, once you introduce the subject, what was unthinkable then becomes thinkable. And from unthinkable to thinkable is a very great distance. But from thinkable to actuality is a much shorter distance. So you can see the rationale behind his loved one's great fears, that Harry is being primed for, well, dispensing with himself. I'm not saying that Meghan is doing this deliberately. I'm not saying that this is her desired outcome. What I am saying is that by doing it and by linking it to his mother, and his mother's suicide attempts, which already would make Harry regard suicide as a more acceptable option than it would otherwise have been had Diana never admitted to being suicidal. And I also have to tell you, having written 2 books on Diana, and to quote People magazine, my Diana biography was the most believable biography that was ever written on Diana. And I hate to say it very immodestly, I agree with them. I do not think that Diana ever intended to commit suicide. I never thought it then, and I don't think it now. I observed on many occasions, including to Diana herself, that you cannot peel yourself to death, when she tried to make out that by scratching herself with a potato peeler, that was a suicide attempt. I have never believed that Diana was doing anything but grandstanding and trying to get attention and trying to get sympathy. I could be wrong, I could be doing her a grave injustice, but I actually think I'm not wrong. And I actually don't think I'm doing her an injustice either. In fact, I think I am helping to clean up her reputation, because Diana tried to make out that she tried to commit suicide when she was pregnant with William. She did not. That's my considered opinion. And her claims to the contrary, Diana never seriously actually did anything to endanger her life. It was always what we can kindly call cries for help. And in her instance, the cries for help were because she was very disturbed about various things. And this, incidentally, was at a stage when Charles and Camilla were long since over and had not resumed their relationship. So let's be clear about that. So let's keep Camilla out of this altogether. But by bringing in this suicide card, Meghan has primed Harry for, by making the topic a topic of possibility where she's concerned, and then nobly saying, but she wouldn't do it to him. So she's proving how much she loves him. She loves him more than life itself, and so she's willing to sacrifice her desire to die because she loves him so much. I mean, that's, in my view, serious gaslighting. You do not, if you love somebody, say to them, I want to kill myself because I am unhappy about the fact that the press are not being as nice to me as I would like. And therefore, and since your family will not censor and silence the press, I want to commit suicide. I mean, that to me is a really sick scenario. Very sick. And if they can't see it, that confirms how really genuinely sick they are. And I don't think they can see it. So it really does show how totally, totally sick both of them are. They think they're going to get sympathy. They shouldn't be getting sympathy for this. However, by introducing suicide as a viable alternative. When you are dealing with somebody who is unstable, as proud, as impetuous, as hyper-emotional, as irrational as Harry, and you are dealing with somebody who has been isolated from, and actually he has had all the ropes to his past, all his moorings have been loosened. So he is really like a ship adrift. Well, can you imagine? There are the rocks. The captain decides she's going to jump ship. Is it any surprise that his loved ones are concerned? More so now than ever, and they were really concerned 2 years ago, that if that relationship breaks up, or when it breaks up, or if the relationship starts to unravel, that Harry will be in so deep, his personality will have been so chewed up, his self-respect will have been so shattered, his humiliation will have been so complete that he will top himself. It's not an unrealistic fear. I have 2 friends who committed suicide, neither of whom anyone would ever have thought would ever commit suicide. The first one was a truly tragic case. I'm not going to mention his surname because he comes from a very well-known Jamaican family. Robert, at 25, Robert used to be very dramatic and used to manipulate his father for money. And he manipulated his father to get a car, and then he decided he wanted to manipulate his father to get a house. And his father was balking at getting him a house. So Robert experimented with how lighter fuel performs when it is doused, when it's doused on fabric. And a mutual friend, visited Robert and said, "Robert, what's wrong with the sofa?" He said, Ziadie-Ann, can you believe what I've been experimenting with lighter fuel and seeing how it performs on fabric, and it burns off. Robert then, a few days later, not realizing that lighter fuel and petrol are completely different things, and one explodes and the other implodes, so to speak. One burns off and the other does not, to put it in lay terms. Robert douses a blanket with petrol, lights it, and runs towards his father. And we could all of us agreed that Robert was going to afterwards say, "Oh, can you believe how I frightened Daddy? But I got the house." Didn't happen. He burnt himself and died an hour later in anguish. My little sister was at the hospital with him. It was a terrible trauma for all his friends. The other case was a former television executive called Jim Anderson, who was a great friend of mine. I met him when I was 19. And Jim was the last person on earth you would have ever thought would commit suicide. He was very bombastic, and he was very rambustious, and he was very extra punitive, and really could be quite naughty and insensitive. And Jim phoned me I was in London at the time, to put me on to some Jamaican woman who was, he had a house in Miami, and he had a flat in the house, and he was having her stay there for a while, in return for which she was going to do, I think, a few hours a week housework. And he put her on the phone to me. And she knew who I was, she knew who my family was, and she started that my family were white oppressors of black people, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, I don't believe this. I thought, this woman has been put on the phone to me and she's insulting me. I didn't say a word. I did not argue with her. When she was quite through talking and stopped for breath, I said, that's all very good and well, but will you please put me back on to Mr. Anderson? Thank you very much. And she started again. And I said, I've heard enough. You need to put me back on to Mr. Anderson, which she did. And I warned him. I said, Jim, that woman is pure poison. I said, anybody who is so abusive to a stranger is somebody you should not be having in your life. I said, and the racial hatred that spews forth out of her. I said, and you seem to forget that you're white as well. It's not funny, Jim. It's not funny. He was laughing. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You know, she only has a chip on her shoulder about white Jamaicans. She doesn't care about... I said, I'm sorry, Jim. I said, you're begging for it, and I hope you don't get it. From my mouth to God's ears. Within a matter of a few weeks, she had concocted a bizarre plan to get money out of Jim by reporting him, I can't remember for what now, some cooked up stupidity. I mean, this was a man of 81 years old. So, I mean, there was nothing carnal or personal about it. But she was obviously a chancer and cooked up this. And then I said to him, Jim, you've got to get rid of her. And he said, oh, yes, I'm going to. And the next thing I knew was I couldn't reach him. And finally, after about 2 or 3 weeks, I got through to somebody. She had him arrested on some trumped up charge so that she could then sue him and get $2 million, whatever it was, out of him, or maybe just the house, I don't know. He was so distraught, so humiliated, so upset, and so unbelieving that anybody could do something like that to another human being who'd been nice to her. He went home, took out his revolver, put it in his mouth, and that was it. And that's what people who love Harry, at least some of them, fear is going to happen to him. It happened to Jim Anderson, and I hope it doesn't happen to Harry, but I can tell you this is what people who love him fear is going to happen to him. that he's going to be played to the extent he's making a complete fool of himself in front of the world. He is trashing his family. He thinks, Dumbo that he is, that if he says, oh, I'm not trashing my family, and then trashes them, that people are going to think, oh, well, of course, Harry's really trashing his family. He's just trashing his family. You know, the complete inconsistency shows not only a lack of appreciation of his own conduct, or the consequences of his conduct, or the consequences of his conduct upon his relationships with others, and upon the public's perception of him as an individual. I think maybe if you put yourself in Harry's shoes, and then you put yourself in the shoes of his loved ones, and you see how he has moved from being somebody who had his problems, but had a happy-go-lucky personality despite his problems, to now being this egotistical, morose. I mean, he always was egotistical, but he wasn't morose. He was always angry, but he wasn't always morose. And he has been enlightened by Meghan to such an extent, and it's all there to see if you look at his therapy sessions and his rantings and ravings and his articulations with Oprah. Very, very disturbing, very disturbing. Joanne Dickme says, I have just watched an interview that Oprah has done. She has said she has never seen a therapist. Her best friend, Gayle King, is her therapist. And there she is on TV with Harry giving the world advice with no professional training or professional bodies or actual therapist. They need to be taken off the air for malpractice, because surely if you're giving advice or talking about medical issues, you have to be fully licensed and qualified, which they are not for liability purposes. Well, I did not know that Oprah had never had therapy. I'm not an expert on Oprah Winfrey. I very seldom look at television. If I'm looking at it, I'm going to look at something like Domina, which at the moment is on Sky and is about Livia Drusilla, who was Caesar Augustus's wife, second wife. She was the first empress of Rome. Wonderful, wonderful entertainment. And somewhat accurate historically. I don't look at people's pain for pleasure. If you need therapy, I think you should get it. I do not think that being a ghoul, because this is what we're speaking about, people who are entertained by other people's pain, discomfort, misery, are ghouls. Now, I can see that people who are troubled will think, oh, let me see what some famous person has to say on the subject. But it's dangerous, because being famous does not give you the tools of the trade of therapy. Yes, it might give you the tools of the trade of entertainment, but the two things are completely different. I think Oprah And people like that play a very dangerous game. They are making out that because they have conquered their demons and they have been successful despite their demons, even if they have not conquered them, that Mr., Miss, and Mrs. Joe Public can do the same. But these situations are not analogous. It is selling the public snake oil. They're snake oil merchants. I really do think that this sort of entertainment should be shut down. It really should be shut down. I see no good ultimately coming out of it, except to make people who are in pain and are suffering feel a bit better about themselves. But feeling better about yourself for 20 minutes is not lightening the load of your pain. It's not a solution. It is a palliative. It's not a panacea. It doesn't work long term. It's like taking snuff or snorting something. It's not a solution. It is at best an anesthetic. I despair. I have to say, I despair. And I would hope that somehow, somewhere, Harry understands that people who love him have valid fears about the route he is traveling down. Hopefully their fears are misplaced. Hopefully he will continue to be happy with Meghan as they both contemplate their navels and whip each other up into frenzies and paroxysms of victimhood. But that again is not the way to be healthy. No true victim ever wants to be cast in the role of victim. It just doesn't go with the territory. It goes with the territory of a vain, self-centered, spoilt, silly, out of touch with reality people who want attention. And if they are famous enough and they are sufficiently well connected in the entertainment industry, they can even make a shed load of money out of it. How commendable is that? I would submit it's anything but commendable. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. If this has been of interest to you, please like, subscribe, share, press the notification bell, keep the questions coming in, and I would urge you, if you have not signed the petition, but you agree with it, to please do so. Because this is a train that is hurtling down a mountainside there are gaps in the track, and it would be very nice if it flies off in such a way that it does minimal injury to the passengers on the train. Thank you and goodbye.